everyone, Peter Hewitt, La-Artistino here. Today I thought we'd talk a bit about different colouring techniques when you're colouring in your colouring books. In the first part of this video, I will be discussing different ways that you can apply colour to your colouring books to achieve different effects. We'll also be visiting the colour wheel and looking how using the colour wheel can help us with choosing colours. In the second part of this video, I'll be demonstrating some of these techniques using Kerby Rosanes' marvellous book, Animorphia. I find this book a lot of fun and it has a lot of opportunities for using different colouring techniques. Now the tools I'll be using this time will be budget priced colouring pencils as opposed to the expensive artist quality pencils. I've decided to visit these again because a lot of people can't afford the more expensive pencils, or they just don't want to spend that much money on pencils, but they still want to get the best out of what they've got. And you can achieve quite lovely results with budget style colouring pencils, so that is what I'll be using today. You can achieve exactly the same results with your high quality artist pencils as well, so do experiment with all of them. To clarify what I mean by budget style pencils, here are a few common examples that you'll see almost everywhere in the world. Okay, there's the Faber Castell Classics as opposed to the Polychromes, which are the expensive brand, Crayolas and Staedtler Norris clubs. All these will work fine with these techniques. But today I'm going to be using my two favourites, which is the Micador ColouRush pencils, purchased in Australia for $12 for a pack of 36 when I purchased them. I think they've gone up a little bit in price since then. And I'm going to use a very old pack of pencils. I've taken them out actually, they're somewhere else. These are fun stuff, and these are really low budget price pencils marketed at children. I think I paid $3 for a pack of 26 of those, but I like them. I don't know if you can get these anymore. I bought them about 10 years ago and I haven't seen them for years. But as I said, any will do. Now, the type of result that you can hope to achieve with these pencils is this. These are just done with my fun stuff ones and the Micador ColouRush. And as you can see, you can get great colour out of them. You won't get as much layering as you will with the professional pencils, but you've got all these lovely bright colours that they come in, and they're fun to play with. Now to start off with, I'm just going to have a little look at different techniques people use for colouring in. In this art journal you can see I've created a number of leaves and I've used different techniques to colour them in, and I'll discuss each of them. First off is just basic colouring. I've taken the leaf shape and I've just coloured it all quite darkly in one colour, and this is a very basic way of colouring in. It's good for colouring in backgrounds if you've got the patience to do that, or colouring in very small areas that you don't want to fiddle around too much with. It's a technique used by a lot of beginner colourists, and it can look quite good. In Kerby's book he has textures added to his line art, so that can give you a bit of depth and interest when using just this plain straight colouring technique. On this one, as you can see, I've used 4 different colours. I've used a yellow, an orange, a scarlet type red and a darker red, but I've not bothered to blend very much, and although you could use this for special effects, it isn't the best way to apply a nice colour gradient. Next to it here, I've actually blended the colours in, and you can see it's a much more pleasant effect by blending when you go from the darkest colour and then spread out to your lightest colour. Now I like to start with the lightest colour first, but I don't always do that. Some people like to start with the darkest colour first, and then they blend in the intermediary colours as they go along. This technique down here, if we like to jump here, is another technique that I see often used. This is a nice one for people who don't have a lot of time to colour, or they get a lot of pain in their hands when they press down on a pencil. You're basically just colouring in very lightly, shading around the outside, or dark around the outside, and then shading into white as you get in the centre. And this is a technique that can look very effective. On this leaf, I've put the darkest colour in the middle and the lightest colour around the outside using this technique, but just placing the colours in different places to get a different effect. It's exactly the same. Again, I like to start with the lightest colour around the outside and graduate into the dark. Another way I can do it is to start with the lightest colour on the outside, put the darkest colour in the middle, but very softly, and then add the intermediary colours over the top. That looks quite good. I like this technique. And another one that's very popular is the shiny leaf technique. Now you can see I've channeled Joanne Basford and made a double leaf with a double outline, so that you've got this interior with the darker colours at the ends, fading into the lighter colour in the middle, and then again a darker colour or a contrast colour going around this outline, but also using the shiny leaf technique where you leave a light spot on the outsides and in the centres of the lines.
Lastly, on the top right hand side you have my favourite form of colouring, and that is incorporating lighting and shadow. As you can see, I've got the yellow on the upper left hand side denoting the light, and the darker colour on the bottom right hand side showing you the shadow. And I've used a variety of in-between colours to blend it all in to give the object a three-dimensional and realistic looking effect.
Okay, now we'll move on to the colour wheel. I prepared this colour wheel to discuss how to choose colours. It's a question I'm often asked. Now, if you're going to try and create a gradient, but you're not familiar with the colour wheel and you're going to pick any colour that you think might go, think again, it may turn out to an awful mess. As you can see here, I've started with a blue, I've gone to an orange, and then a purple. I've jumped all over the colour wheel from there to there to there, and even thrown in a bit of light green. And the problem with doing this is when you mix the opposing colours, you tend to end up with the muddy brown mess. So it may look interesting, but if you're going to attempt this kind of colour choices, I would suggest you test it out on a piece of paper first. As you can see, it doesn't work very well. Now, if you go to this leaf here, instead of jumping all around the colour wheel, I have followed the line of the colour wheel. I've started with the dark blue, I've gone to a dark sort of teal colour, which is a cross between the blue and the green, and then I've gone to the green, and I've gone to this lime colour, and I've finished it off, though it's hard to tell, with just a little bit of yellow on the corners, and you get this nice pleasing gradient look instead. So when you're picking your colours, try to follow the line of the colour wheel. Now, a little bit on shading. A lot of people ask me about shading and how to apply it, and we'll get more into that later, but for now I'll tell you about 3 different ways that you can shade, or what sort of colour choices to use. In this first one, I've used a black pencil to do the shades, and this can give you a very dynamic effect, but it can also look a bit dirty as well, particularly if you're after nice bright colours, and this will sort of bring it down a little bit. I don't particularly like using black for shading. My black pencils are my least used pencils in the set. Sometimes I do if I'm after a special effect on a particular picture, but the other methods that I'll show you I prefer. Now down here you've got my 2 preferred methods. This one, I've used a darker shade of green and blended it in around where I know the shadows would be, and this gives a more natural effect. On this one, you get a more interesting effect. Now what I've done here, instead of going for the darker colour, I've gone for the opposite colour on the colour wheel. And this leaf was shaded in a kind of a green that's a cross between this darker green, this light green. So I've jumped across and I've shaded it with kind of a cross between this burgundy colour and this scarlet colour, this scarlet red colour. And you can see it's added a lot of interest to the picture, a lot more depth than either using the darker colour or using the black. And this is my preferred method for shading. Okay, enough talk, let's do some colouring. These are examples of the types of shading you can achieve using budget style pencils. I'll now demonstrate how I go about this. The book I will be using for my demonstration today will be Kerby Rosanes' magnificent Animorphia. The picture I'll be using today for this demonstration is this double page spread of two deers with all sorts of trees and animals popping out of them. As you can see, I've already started to colour this, so I'll continue colouring it and I'll show you and explain to you exactly what I'm doing along the way. First off, I'll show you how I colour in the grass here using colour gradients. Now the colours I've chosen for this demonstration is a mossy kind of khaki green colour, a yellowish green, light yellowish green, and a cool kind of slightly greenish lemon yellow. Now these pencils are all the Micador ColouRush pencils. I understand that not everybody has access to these pencils. You can find the equivalent of these pencils in most different types of sets of pencils. Moss green may be a problem with smaller sets of pencils. You can create a moss green by combining a green with a little bit of brown when you're blending. As you can see, I've already started colouring in this with the moss green. Colouring in the tips again, very dark and thick towards the tips, and then flicking it down to create a gradient as I'm heading towards the roots of the grass. Once you're satisfied with this, you can move on and start applying your mid colour, your green, or you could go and put in your lightest colour or the end colour, which in this case will be the yellow. Either way will do. Just experiment and see what style you prefer. I'm going to use my yellow and put in the roots though. Now this pencil is looking a little bit dull, but for the purpose of this demonstration it'll be okay. Normally I'd sharpen it up a little bit more. As you can see, once again I'm going in very heavy at the base of the grass stems and feathering it up lighter as I go up the grass stems to the tips. I won't go all the way, I'll leave a little bit of a white border here. I'm happy with that. So now I'll grab my green, again the middle green, and I'll apply that in the centre, bringing the dark khaki green and the lemon green together in a colour gradient. Now you could colour this grass all the one colour, you know, just a flat, and that would look fine, but making a colour gradient looks quite more interesting, I think, and a bit more realistic, and I think it's a bit more fun as well to play around with. There. As you can see, we've got the yellow down the bottom. I'll just burnish that in a bit more, and going up to these darker tips, and it looks a lot more interesting. Okay, I'm happy with that. Here is another area where clumps of grass appear, so I'll just run through it again so you can see exactly what I did. Again, colour in the base yellow, making it nice and thick towards the bottom and feathering it out as you go up. Grab this yellowy green colour and use it to bring the yellow and the olive together. Now a word about these budget price pencils. They do not have as much pigment as artist style pencils, artist quality pencils do, and you have to press a bit harder to get more colour down. I find it does make it a little easier to get a smoother effect quite quickly though. There. Just burnish the yellow in a little bit more, and I'll just put a bit more of the olive in. right happy with that. Next we'll colour in these little floral heads here. I'm not quite sure what they are. Could be pussy willows, they could be lavender. I might make them, I'll go for a violet colour I think. Right, so this is where I get my little piece of paper and do a bit of experimenting. So here's my bit of paper, and I'll see what purples I've got, or violets. Now let's have a look. I've got one like, that's nice. These, by the way, are the cheap Fun Stuff pencils. There we go. And you probably will never find these. Oh, that's not bad. It's probably a little bit too red, I think, for what I want. Okay, what's Micador got? It's a darkish purple. This is a good idea when you're trying to decide on a colour. Just make some little swatches and figure out what you want. I'm going to go with this light, where is it, violet colour. Now once again, you'll just have to look for the appropriate coloured pencil in the sets that you have. Now the other thing I want to work out is how to shade it, what colour to use for shading. So let's just put a bit more of that down and we'll experiment with some colours. You could shade with just black, but as you saw in my previous demonstration, that can leave the picture looking a little bit dark and muddy, and I don't think it does the best for the colours unless you're after a particular effect. Okay, I'll lay down a couple of swatches. There we go. Let's see. Now remember what we said about the colour wheel and where the colours sat. And I was using either a colour that is very close to the original colour but a bit darker, say a darker shade of purple or a blue, or you can jump right across to the other side of the colour wheel and use its opposite or complementary colour. And if I grab my colour wheel, we'll have a look what they are. Okay, we've got a purple. Now the closest colours to the purple would be this sort of dark ultramarine blue or this kind of a burgundy colour for shading, or we can jump across and get a yellow. Now yellow is a very light colour, you're not going to be able to shade with that, so I'm going to take a couple of steps to the side and use an orange and see what that works out like. Okay, where we've got, here's an ultramarine, I'll put that one in. That's kind of interesting looking. Okay, let's try the burgundy colour. This gives it a warmer feel. The blue makes it look a bit cooler. I'm not too wrapped on that one. Now let's jump over and use the orange. Now do this yourself when you're picking colours to shade. Don't just stick with what you know. Have a go at testing out different combinations. This makes a nice dull shade actually and rather warm. This one, just put a bit more purple over the top. Kind of another warmish, neutrally warmish one, and a dark one. Okay, I'm going to go with the blue because I want to keep it all looking nice and bright. Okay, now the technique I'm going to use to colour this is I'm going to think of where the light is coming from. Now I'm going to think about the light as coming from this direction down onto this object, or these little flower heads, and then how the light passes down through the flower head and then bounces off some object below it and then strikes it in the back as well. So you're going to have a lot of light on one side and a little bit of light on the other side, and this will give it a nice more of a dynamic and 3D sort of effect. So I'll make it very dark on the side that are furthest away from the light, and I'll leave just a little bit of light there. You don't have to do this reflected light if you don't want to. You can just use a light source striking the top of the object, but I think it looks a little bit more dynamic if you can give this one a go. So a little bit of white left there, darkest right next to that side where furthest away from the light source, and then feather it out and then leave it a little bit white. Same here, make it darkest furthest away from the light source, and then feathering it out, leaving this little halo of white. And once again. Now to put a bit more shade into it, you could leave it like this, but I like to add a little bit more shade to it. So I'm going to pick up my Micador Ultramarine and pop it in. I find the ultramarine colours pretty much the same no matter what packet of pencils you've got. Now I'll just flick a little bit of the dark along the border furthest away from the light source and shade it in, and you've got a much nicer dynamic looking piece, much more interesting colour wise. While I'm here, I'm just going to colour in the stems just to complete this little portion of the picture. There, and I'll just add a little bit of dark towards the bottom of the stems just to give it a little gradient. There. See how much more interesting it looks using a light source and retaining some of the white. Finally, let's do one of the bigger features in this menagerie of animals and plants. I'm going to work on this guy, this sort of cross between a dinosaur and a giraffe, I think. Now, first of all, choosing the colours, I think I might go for some orangey colours, I think. Let's have a look. Get my little test sheet again. And what have I got? I've got this kind of orange. This kind. It's kind of a light skin tone. Micador makes a very nice skin tone. This is available in their 12 pack as well. Always after a good skin tone, particularly if you're doing a lot of people. That's a darker one. That's one from my fun stuff. That one also does a funny kind of a skin tone too. More pinky. Okay, right, there's some interesting colours to work with. And of course we can go for some reds. That's a vermilion, a kind of a very deep orange more than a red, I think. And here's another red, that's more of a red. For shadowing, we'll jump across to the other side of the colour wheel perhaps and use a purple. And with me using the orange, I'm just debating whether to go for a bit of yellow as well to make it pop. Yeah. Okay, we'll see how we go with that. There's my colours. We'll start off with, I think we'll go for the light skin tone. Now again, using the technique of thinking about where the light is, pardon me, striking the object, I'll leave a little bit of white and I'll put in the lightest colour. Just down the neck a little bit, around his face. I'm leaving a halo of white there. There we go. So it's a bit hard to see with this faint colour, but I am leaving an area of white just around where the light would strike this giraffe dinosaur. I'll go right down the back to push this up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing down the bottom here. There we go. Now here where the knee curves around, I'm going to put a little bit more there, again leaving a little bit of white. And where the limbs are here, same thing, right around the top where the light would strike it, leaving a little bit of white. And I'll make a colour gradient down the legs of this creature, so the bottom part of the legs will also be the palest colour. There we go. it's a very intense orange I'm about to use, so I'm just going to lay a foundation down of this skin colour just so that the orange isn't quite so retina-fryingly bright. Okay, let's move to the orange. Okay, now as you saw before in my little colour palette here, this is the lighter orange that I've got out of the two sets, so this is the first one I'm going to use. And we'll blush it in, sort of like on the lower border of where I put that skin tone. Again, if you're using artist quality pencils, you won't have to press as hard as I do with these cheaper pencils. I'm having to press fairly moderately hard to get this much colour down. Now see how I've coloured in the leg here? I've left a border of white on one side and a border of light on the other side. It's the light striking the animal from above, but there's a bit of reflected light on either side as well. And as you recall, reflected light is when the light passes by the animal on either side, strikes another object below it, and then bounces back up. Now, more advanced artists would actually look at the colour of what the light struck, say it was a bright blue colour, and make the reflected light bluish toned. That's a bit advanced for what I'm doing here. And if you're interested in that, you can let me know and I can go more into detail about different hues in reflected light. Or you can have a look, there's more YouTube videos about that would more thoroughly describe that phenomenon. There we go. Just push in some orange into there, just in front of the knee. And then, because the knee is sticking up, we'll leave that white and then put more orange down here. Now that begs the question, what do we do for this belly part here? I could just make it all the one colour, but I think it'd be more interesting if I put another colour for his belly, or her belly. Actually, she looks more like a girl to me. But before I do that, I'll just add a little bit more. I might go for a darker orange, this one. Just along the border here. And in between all with the little margins are, where the knee is and where the, well, I guess that'd be the elbow in a human, so where her elbow is, down the bottom here. Okay, I'll just pull it down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing with her head. And a little bit of a blush around here and a little bit around the base of her eyes. Now I might go back to one of my original colours and just blend it all in a bit more. Just smoothing it out. Okay, now if I want to take my purple now and see how I go with giving it a little bit of shading with the contrast colour. Now I'll test it with this purple first on a scrap piece of paper. So we've got that orange as the darkest orange. Just try and imitate what I've already got there. Now let's see what happens when I add this purple. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? And this is actually, it's not that one, it's this purple here. I've gone for a warmer purple, so it's more of a burgundy-ish kind of purple. And that makes a nice, interesting kind of a shade, doesn't it? Okay, we'll use that. So, right at the lowest margin, let's just push in a little bit of that. Now, I think what I might do for the belly is, going back to here, this more of a pinkish skin tone. So I'll grab that one out. That was this one. And hang on, I'll just show you what I did before with this. I just realised we were out of camera here. I took the purple and I just applied it around to the shadowed areas of this Beastie to give it a nice dynamic look like that. Take the orange again and just burnish it in a bit more. There we go. And that looks a lot more interesting than applying the black. And now, as I was saying, for the belly, we'll go for this pinkish skin tone. And the same thing here, I'll leave a little margin of white on the outside and I'll just bring that in. Just enough of a difference, I think. Go up the neck. I'll use this to colour the Beastie's chin as well. Now to create shade, because it's a pink colour, I think I might go for let's have a look. I better do this properly, hey? Let's put this in. And my impulse is to use a blue. So let's see. I've got a blue here and I'll put that on and see how that shades. That's interesting. A blue effect. Or I could perhaps go for a green, seeing that her belly faces the grass and therefore the reflected light would be green. I actually don't like that as much. I think I like the blue better. You could try purple if you like, or something different, but I'm going to go for the blue. Now, once again, I'm just going to push this, just blush it in gently. I'm not going to go too strong with this. Just where the shade would be. And colour-wise, that looks a lot more dynamic. For her legs here, just a little bit blue towards the back and the bottom where it'd be shaded, maybe just under her knees too. I'm applying this very, very lightly, by the way, because it's a very intense colour and I don't want to make it look blue, I just want to make it look shaded. There. Okay, that looks interesting. I'll pop up to her head and just complete that. A little bit of blue under her neck there. Pinky colour again to blend it in. There, she's just about done. I've got to pick a colour for her little, what would you call those, antenna? They're not quite horns, are they? I think I'm going to make them red. I think that would look nice, kind of a pinky red. Okay, let's see how we go with that. This is a geranium red. Again, test it out, make sure it's what I want. And it's a lovely geranium red, so we'll use that. Just colour these in. Again, it's a bit more difficult with it being such a small area, and you really should do with a nice sharp point. Let's just blend that in. And I might bring it down to her using, which one? This colour. This is the original flesh tone that I used. And I will use the blue just to make this a little bit darker right at the bottom. Could do with a sharper pencil for this. Such tiny areas to work in. Some of his pictures aren't quite this tiny. I think this is probably the finest of all the drawings that are in this book. Yeah, okay, that makes him look interesting. Right, and there you go. As you can see, we've got some nice interesting mixes of colour in here, and we've got this great reflected light where the light is striking the animal, this, what did I call it? Giraffe dinosaur, and making them look a little bit more 3D. And that's how I achieve the effect that I do in this book. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy colouring!